What I usually do is build like a preliminary site plan of just general ideas we have and what we would like to do with the property and how many units we would like. And from there, when we have a conceptual understanding of what we would like to do, and we have enough due diligence to know that it's possible, we present it to the city. It's basically a pre-application review meeting. In that meeting, the city basically tells us, hey, this is something you might face. We would already have known about easements, but maybe there's an easement we don't know about somehow. It wasn't on title or title missed it. This area is a flood control area. There's a certain endangered species in there. So all the things we wouldn't really know from doing our own due diligence research, they may bring up and they may let us know like, hey, this is where we want the city's direction to go in. And your project does align or your project doesn't align. So it's kind of up to them. So in the zoning, I mainly look for the density that's allowed and how many stories you can go up and the setbacks. Because from that, I can go in the site plan and set up boundaries to see, okay, this is how big the site is. This is how much space I have for setbacks. And this is how many units I can put in with that and how much open space requirements, maybe some other requirements that are unique to that city. And I build my site plan based on that concept. Something that is constantly a problem on a lot of projects is water, whether it's maybe in a floodway or how to actually get the utilities to the project. Most of the time, the utility connections are really far. If they're downhill, the project is mostly not going to happen. But sometimes you can figure it out and get a pump station in there and get the utilities up. Another example that I did catch wind of is for undergrounding the power lines. There's been from SCE that were like $500,000. It was an incredible amount of it was basically just a gray area where they're like, hey, we don't know if we're going to use all this money, but you're going to have to give us all this money and we may give it back. And so working with
Wow.
Edison in that way can be a little daunting. But yeah, I think the biggest problem that would come up is getting utility connections and seeing if there's a floodway in your project, which would just kill it immediately. Okay.
Welcome to an episode of Affordable Housing and Real Estate Investing. Guys, today I have Mr. Jared Ferrazzano on the podcast today. And this guy has a really interesting background because he started out as a real estate agent, but then he moved just like a year and a half ago into pre-development, entitlements. And I thought it would be so valuable for all of you guys to learn about how to actually force a huge amount of equity into your property, into your land by getting that project approved to build whatever it is that you want to build. And I thought, I bet he has a lot of lessons that he can share with us today. So, Mr. Jarrett, how you doing today, man? Welcome to the podcast.
I'm doing good. How are you?
I am fantastic, man. So you have such an interesting background because a lot of people, it's such a good story because a lot of people think they need a real estate license to get into real estate. But a lot of people don't realize like how many different aspects of real estate there really is in the world. And you have gone to sometimes as a real estate agent, you got to be really, really extroverted. But then as a developer and the talent phase, you got to be really, really organized. And sometimes those types of buckets of work they require different personalities sometimes. So, man, just tell us a little bit about your story. How did you get into real estate in the first place?
Yeah. So I started back in maybe even before high school, but in my high school days where I was interning with my friend's dad. And by interning, I mean he was a really close friend of mine, and his dad taught me a lot. And he kept teaching me about real estate and about pre-development and about doing flips. And he was doing small projects, like one or two homes, and he would flip them and move around. And I just really loved it. Since I was a kid, I always played building games. Like I played with Legos and like I always had like a thing for building. So I continued to grow in that. And my brother-in-law, he got his real estate license. And so after high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I was wishy-washy in school. And so I basically got my license. And I followed his footsteps and I did that for, I think I've had my license for 5 years now. And so, yeah, it's been a while. So I've been doing that with him, and I think just over time, as I was doing it, I started to realize that I wanted to get more involved in the development side and in building the homes. And so, yeah, do you want me to any caveats or anything, or want me to keep going?
No, I think I want to hear from you. So, becoming a real estate agent, that's a very common path for people to take to head into real estate.
Mm.
What would you think that is like one or two things that people don't really realize about what it means to become a real estate agent. Any
Mm,
sort of aha moments for you or gotcha moments that you just didn't expect after
yeah.
you started?
Yeah, I think the first gotcha moment that like is seems obvious, but like when you're a kid, it's not, is like it is a full-time job. You know, like when you hear the
Yes.
idea of commission roles and the fact that you just have to get a license, then you can get started, it kind of has like so much like glamour, like, oh, this is so easy, this is gonna be no problem. But it takes years to build that reputation and to build systems and to build yeah, the reputation with a community where people respect you and they want to sell their home with you or buy a home with you. Because a lot of people have an agent that they know of in their life. And so by doing business with you, they're basically saying that they trust you the most out of anybody in their immediate community of real estate agents, which is a big responsibility. And so I had originally just thought it would be no problem. I would just get business like similar to a job. And it wasn't like that at all. I assisted my brother who had a great reputation in the industry. He does divorce real estate, and he's one of the only certified divorce real estate agents in California.
Wow.
Yeah. And so he's a hardworking guy. And so I was able to kind of follow in his footsteps and learn so much from him. But getting clients on my own was extremely difficult. And the second aha moment is being a real estate agent takes a lot of patience.
So good.
Yeah, because working from business to consumer and working with a client who doesn't know the full scope of what you're doing with them, it requires a lot of patience and understanding on your end to convey the value that you're bringing to them and also have like a sense of security in what you're doing just because you enjoy it and because you want to help, if that makes sense.
Yeah, this is so good because I love your first point because a lot of people underestimate how much time it takes to generate leads.
Mm,
It's such a huge time commitment,
yeah,
to use your words. Because sometimes people are like, oh, I'll just become an agent. I just got to tell my friends and family, and then boom, I get business. But you forget that they're putting the trust in probably one of the largest investments, one of the largest financial transactions that they might engage in through their entire life.
yeah,
And that's a huge amount of trust. And I loved how you said everyone probably knows an agent already. But for them to go with you, they have to trust you way more than probably the 50 or 100 real estate agents that they probably talked to in their life.
yeah,
This is so good. I think you really open the eyes of folks that are thinking about going to real estate. And now they can sit down and really think clearly for themselves like, hey, is this right for me? Do I want to spend all this time generating leads? Do I want to spend all this time becoming essentially someone's emotional support,
yeah.
becoming someone's therapist throughout the entire transaction, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's
All of this.
yeah, it's a much more emotional role than people realize.
Oh my goodness. I mean, props to you for doing it for so long and learning so much too, because that probably taught you a lot of patience. And
It
I'm
did.
sure that naturally helped segue into your development career. Now, sometimes people say the word development, like it sounds like a fancy word, but what does development even mean, Jared?
Yeah, so to develop land is to basically get it build ready for a home. So I do pre-development and I help with getting development prepared. So development
Mm,
itself is basically the grading, the sewer water connections, the electrical work, and getting everything prepared to basically get up to the crescendo of getting the house going vertical.
that's such a good, simple definition. It's like you've been taught that before. That's interesting. All right. So when you get a piece of land, it might just be like raw dirt. It might have a certain amount of a certain zoning attached to it. Where do you get involved with that process from the moment it's just raw dirt and that it's being considered to be built into a house, into a development, into another real estate building? What sort of your role in that process?
Yeah, so they pull me in to do the entitlements and the due diligence. And so if they say, for example, they were to get a raw piece of land, I would basically look on title, see who owns it, see what zoning it is, see how big it is. I would try to get a survey done, or I would just look at an APN map to see what the site looks like and what the boundaries are. And luckily, I was taught how to do some CAD work. And so, what I usually do is build like a preliminary site plan of just general ideas we have and what we would like to do with the property and how many units we would like. And from there, when we have a conceptual understanding of what we would like to do, and we have enough due diligence to know that it's possible, we present it to the city and we say, hey, this is our project. This is what we plan on doing. This is what we would like to do. And it's basically a pre-application review meeting. And in that meeting, the city basically tells us, hey, this is something you might face. We would already have known about easements, but maybe there's an easement we don't know about somehow. It wasn't on title or title missed it. This area is a flood control area. There is a certain endangered species in there. And so all the things we wouldn't really know from doing our own due diligence research, they may bring up and they may let us know, like, hey, this is where we want the city's direction to go in. And your project does align or your project doesn't align. So it's kind of up to them.
Ooh, okay. So much to unpack here, right? So you get a piece of raw land, and what you do specifically is you try to look up the zoning right away. I just want to make sure I say it back to you correctly.
Mhm.
You try to look at the boundaries. Then you try to build a preliminary site plan, just figuring is that so you look at zoning. What are you looking at the zoning for? What are you trying to understand about the zoning?
Yeah, so in the zoning, I mainly look for the density that's allowed and how many stories you can go up and the setbacks. Because from that, I can go in the site plan and set up boundaries to see, okay, this is how big the site is. This is how much space I have for setbacks. And this is how many units I can put in with that and how much open space requirements, maybe some other requirements that are unique to that city, and I build my site plan based on that concept. And yeah, we go from there.
Interesting. Okay, and just to for people that don't know what a setback even is, what does a setback mean?
Yeah, so cities require proper or homes in general to be placed anywhere between 5 and 20 feet back from the edge of the property. And that's why when you see in a lot of neighborhoods they have such a large front yard area, it's because the city wouldn't let them like literally plop the home right on the sidewalk. They need to have a certain amount of setback in order to build the home and to go with the look that they want in that area.
So it's almost like you got sidewalk space, then you got like a front yard space before you get to the home, and that's generally the vibe that they want or the look that they want for the city, right? That's kind of why the whole premise behind setbacks were in there in the first place.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's other reasons that I'm not aware of. But yeah, that is
Hmm.
what I understand. Because if you go to a more high density area, the setbacks are smaller and you can get closer to the sidewalk and the buildings are taller. And yeah, so the zoning is actually really important. It basically tells you what you're allowed to build in this area unless you got some sort of variance, which isn't common.
Got it. Got it. And when you look at zoning, right? So obviously you got to understand what the setbacks were, and zoning teaches you about density. How would you recommend now that you've been doing it for like 1.5 years, right?
Mm,
How does someone best learn about zoning? What are your
mm.
thoughts? Again, start all over again. How would you learn about zoning?
Yeah, it's actually super easy. I would basically just go to the city zoning map, and from that map, find where your project is at, and you'll see it'll just be like R1, R2, or some other code. And from there, pull up that city's specific municipal code and look up that zoning. And from there, it'll basically give you a whole book of requirements and setbacks and specifics to that zoning area. And so I would just print that out, review it. If there's any terms you don't understand, write them down, get the definition. Because that's what I did at the beginning a lot. When I first joined
Mm.
entitlements, it was a foreign language. I had no idea what anyone was saying to me. It was really stressful. But I wrote down
Dude, I
everything.
bet. Oh my goodness. Well, I've read those zonings items too.
Mm,
And sometimes there's a lot of legalese in there
yeah,
where you're like, okay, what did I just read? Does this even make sense?
yeah,
And have you tried? I've tried at least like figuring out like, okay, maybe I can like copy and paste this, put into ChatGPT,
yeah.
and figuring out how I can understand this code better. What can I do with the project? Have you used any tools to help you break it down, or like in the beginning, you because ChatGPT wasn't as prevalent back then, like actually learning all the legalese and terminology? What was sort of your approach, and what would you change now?
Yeah, so it is crazy how much has changed in a year and a half because Back then, I didn't really. I started to use ChatGPT a little bit, and so I would write down words, and I would use actually it's Copilot. I would use the AI that Microsoft
Oh,
provides, and I didn't really fully understand how it worked, but I would basically just ask it the definition of words. And I had a notebook,
smart.
and I would write down everything. Any word I didn't know what it meant, I'd write it down. I'd write down the definition, and I would do this over and over until I started to understand the conversations more. But now what I would do genuinely is I'd basically do the same thing because writing is good for your memory. But I would just ask ChatGPT to give me a version that resonates with me because it knows over the time of your interactions with ChatGPT, it knows how you learn, like it knows your mannerisms,
Oh,
and it's pretty incredible what it can do. So I'd say in a way that I can understand, please explain what setbacks are.
that is so good. That's such a good little nugget there because I think it teaches people to take action now. Even
Mm,
if this is the first time you're learning about zoning, then you go back and forth with ChatGPT and you say, "Hey, this is. Am I understanding it? Like, say it back to ChatGPT. Am I understanding it correctly? Like, how would you tweak it? How would
yeah.
you?" Because I like to put whenever I create content, I try to ask ChatGPT, "Hey, put it into like a fifth grade comprehension level or 10
Yeah.
year level."
Yeah.
That's how most people understand it. You have fancy words in a building code. There's no way. That's probably
Yeah.
why most people never learn about development because they don't want to read through it.
Yeah.
Probably the reason why they didn't want to become a lawyer, right,
Yeah.
Jared?
Yeah. No, that's
All right.
yeah, and that's actually a big concept for making social media content is you want it to be as digestible as possible. And you'll realize that's actually very helpful in life in general. People don't generally want jargon and they don't want all the big words and all the
Yes.
they just want a simple concept to just move forward. And yeah, that's what
That is
I've learned that a lot.
so true. That is so true. It's so different from what I learned in high school, where they teach you, hey, you got to BS this paper. You got to
Mm,
stretch a 2 page paper into a 10 page paper,
yeah.
put in a bunch of corporate speak in there. It's all a
Yeah.
bunch of garbage.
Yeah.
If no one understands you, what's the point of communicating,
Yeah.
right? Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
All right. So we just talked about zoning, Jared.
Mm,
And obviously, you can read the as is zoning. But
mhm.
how do you look for opportunities in terms of, hey, what else can I do? Like, what if I rezone this property? Like, what kind of exceptions can I get? How do I get more units on this land? Like, how do you approach that process and figure out, sort of answer the question, what else can I do here?
Yeah. So I think what I would do in that case, and we've actually done this before, is you make a site plan with the requirements that they have in place. And I think something important that you should do beforehand is know the city managers and know the people who work in planning, the people who work in engineering. And by learning who they are and what they're about, you can know what direction that city wants to go in. Because if a city isn't interested in development right now, they're probably going to be pretty stiff when it comes to getting a zoning variance or even a change of zone. And so if I find out that they are interested in a zoning change, I would show them how many units I was able to get with the setbacks they have. And from there, I would show them another example of, hey, with this density and with this new setback, I was able to get this many more units. And we were able to do it in a way because you don't want to obviously compromise people's quality of life. And so if we're able to get more units in without compromising, we present it to them. We're like, hey, like we believe we could get more units in here. It's not exactly with your zoning setbacks, but in this area, you'd like to get more housing. And so it's literally, honestly, it's like a relationship.
So good. And I'm so happy you brought up you should go to the talk to the city first. Because I can't tell you how many times I've heard from developers like, I got this big bad project and everyone's gonna love it because I have this great vision and they can't wait to hear it. And then you go
Mm,
to the city and they're like, what are you trying to do? Like this
yeah,
is no, like the city's not gonna go for this. Like stop it.
yeah.
Like you don't have the votes, you don't have the support, you don't have the community support. It doesn't work.
Mm,
And had you just had that conversation up front, you probably would have saved yourself, I don't know, like weeks of work from
yeah,
looking at the property, doing the CAD drawing so you can build your preliminary site plan before you even get to the city.
yeah,
So that's your recommendation. Like talk to the city first, even when you're considering a piece of land. Talk to the city first, see what direction they're heading in, and then decide like, hey, is it worth my effort to go through looking at the zoning, building a preliminary site plan. Would you say that's your approach now? Or what do you think?
Yeah, yeah, I would say talking to the city first is definitely one of the best choices you can make because they know all about their city. You're basically just coming into their city to build something, and you may be doing the same in six or seven other cities, but their whole entire job is focused on that jurisdiction. And so they always bring something up that we didn't know, and
Mm.
it's always an insightful conversation, and we most of the time can realize from the jump if that city wants us to build there or not.
Okay, got it. All right. This is so good. So let's keep on going. So we get that preliminary site plan back up. Usually you walk into that pre-application meeting with that site plan. Now, is that preliminary site plan like required when you go have the pre-app plan or pre-app meeting, excuse
Mm.
me?
So when you get to the point of a preliminary application review meeting, it is required. That's a little bit down the line, though. The meeting that would be in the due diligence phase would be like a little earlier. It'd just be kind of an unofficial meeting. Because a preliminary application review meeting, usually you have to have a conceptual grading, a conceptual landscape plan, and the conceptual site plan. And getting all of those items requires already coordinating with an architect and a civil engineer and potentially a landscape architect. It's incredible how much goes into building a home. That was where I was really shocked. I couldn't believe how much went into it. But yeah, I'd say it's not required for that very first meeting, but once it gets official, it is required.
Got it. And I love how you brought up from that initial meeting you have with the city manager, the city planning group, or the city engineering group, you can kind of understand what their stance is. And what kind of questions do you recommend people asking in that initial meeting, right? Not the pre-app meeting, but in that first meeting where you're just trying to gauge what is the sentiment from the city about development. What
Yeah.
would you recommend are some of the questions that they should consider or ask?
Hmm. Yeah, it's a that's a hard one to navigate. You don't just ask straight up. I mean, some people do. I think like each person has their own way of doing things and it works. I think for me, I would initially basically just ease into it. I'd show them the site plan, say, hey, we're planning on building this here. I would probably reference some facts from the municipal code so they know I put an effort and like I actually care and I
Smart.
have like intentions with the city. I'm like, hey, I noticed this in this code. I adhered to your setbacks. I did this and that and the other. And as I kind of built that rapport with them, I would then ask them, hey, what do you think about this project? What do you think about this area? Do you guys want us to build here? Is there anything going on here that we need to know about? Any requirements, any forms, any unexpected fees? And usually from that tee off, how they speak back is 100% indicator of if they want us to build there or if not.
Got it. This is so good. This is these are things that like they don't teach you in even like master development courses and things like that. Because these are just such soft skills that you have to learn to develop over time to just understand and just be a good listener,
Yeah,
to be honest with you.
yeah.
Right? Sometimes there's like no one-on-one course on how to listen, which is unfortunate,
Mm,
but I think that's such a great skill to have because you have clearly understand that when you go into these meetings, you are prepared, Jared. And
mm,
then after you show your preparation, you show them that you want to listen to what they want, what they care from their community, because you understand that they're held accountable by
mm,
their city constituents,
mhm.
right? Now, okay, this is so good. So we got the initial meeting. And if the sentiment is positive, what do you do next, Jared?
So I'd say, are you familiar with the concept of like agile project management
Oh
versus
yeah,
like waterfall?
yep.
So,
Yep, I understand agile.
and like just to like, I guess to simplify, it, like waterfall is basically like one, two, three. It's all very linear. It happens the same every time. And construction is, from what I understand, construction is pretty linear like that. You have key milestones in construction and it goes
Fair.
down a similar path. But entitlements is agile, where it's just abstract. Like each city has different
Mm,
things they want you to do, different forms you have to fill out, and it's pretty hard to say what I would do just off the jump. I guess what I would initially want to do is get the track map. I'd get the process started of getting the track map recorded if it isn't already recorded.
interesting. Why do you need a track map recorded? What is that for? What is a track map?
The track map is basically the legalizing the parcels that you'd like to put on this lot. So if it's a neighborhood of, if it was originally, say, like a 3 acre lot and you want to put 25 homes on it, the parcel map shows where the streets are and actually legally puts it in. So that way each home is its own parcel now, rather than just being one lot previously.
Got it. And just for people that don't understand that, right? You're essentially talking like, hey, I got 3 acre piece of lot. It might just be like one lot with like one set of boundaries.
Yeah.
But if you were trying to subdivide it and build 25 homes and sell them as 25 individual homes, then you need to clearly outline which home is where and what are the borders of that home specifically. Did I say that back to you correctly?
Yeah.
Did I miss anything for you?
Yeah, and
Okay.
getting that approved is later in the process, but I mean, you start with the tentative track map, and that's kind of the first little hurdle. And in that, you're getting your conceptual landscapes done, you're getting your conceptual civil done, you're getting some utility plans drawn out, and that's kind of like the first little win. But once you get that final track map recorded, that's kind of the signifier that this is happening. We're gonna build this.
Got it. All right. I know there's a lot of work in that bucket of in that milestone in of itself already.
Yeah.
So let's kind of break it down, right? So, all right, you get some approvals, you have a conceptual site plan. And what is sort of your role working with the architect, the civil engineer, or even the utility companies, right? Because you have to start thinking about how do I get water, how do I get water, sewer, electric out to the site. So tell us about, a little bit about how you wrangle all these resources to start moving together towards that process of getting that track map, I mean, the tentative track map and getting the project approved. So tell us a little bit about how much coordination there is to get everybody together.
Yeah, and so that's actually probably the whole role is really just coordinating this like legal circuit. And I think how I've done it and how it's actually I've really enjoyed entitlements is I've made it's basically a racy matrix that's specifically for real estate. And at my first role, my mentor and the person who led the team I was on taught me the concept of a racy matrix, which was invaluable to me, genuinely. Like he was super patient with me. He taught me how to do it, and from there I kind of just took it and ran with it. And I wish I could show you, but I basically just have a racing matrix where every item that is in California entitlements, not every item, but almost every item that comes with California entitlements is on it. And I have color-coded tiles to track where something is and whose court it is in and what date that happened.
Oh, this is so good. I love it. This, and I think this shows people in order for you to be good at this, you have to be super organized
Yeah.
and you have to be super on top of it because it sounds simple when you say it, like, oh, I got to coordinate everybody. But when you need every piece to fall in line together to get to that point of approval, you really can't drop anything because you
Yeah.
drop something, all of a sudden, all let's say you forgot to inform the power company. That might add like 3, 6, 12 months to your timeline if you
Yeah.
forget about something like that.
Yeah.
So obviously there's so much coordination, Jared. Like, were there any mistakes that you made, or were there any problems that came up during the entitlement process that you can share with the audience today and how you overcame those problems?
Yeah. Well, there's honestly, so the whole role is just putting out fires and fixing problems. But I think one problem that I was able to catch and or my team was able to catch was we were processing because you're processing all the plans at once and they're all being done by different teams and different companies. And so our civil plans, the footprint that they had for the architectural design wasn't up to date, and we were almost at the point of the civil approval. And so to get it reapproved after we had it approved would have cost another review fee. It would have had the potential of bringing up other problems that we didn't want to bring up again. And so we were able to coordinate with the architect to, hey, would you mind sending us a new footprint so we can update our civil plans? And I wouldn't have noticed that from the get-go, but luckily my team saw it. And that's one problem where it's seems so small, but on an official construction ready plan, it's big because the team out there is reliant on that plan as the gospel. And so they're building based on that plan.
Well, okay. Now, just for people that don't understand, when you say footprint, it sounds very straightforward to you. But when you say the footprint for the architectural design was not up to date, what does that mean?
So basically, the civil plans are the plans that show the grading of the land and the slopes and all the sorts of things that are underneath the home. And in that, they show the actual outline of the home itself and how it's going to sit on the pad. And so when that isn't up to date, it basically just makes it confusing because the architectural plan will show one thing and how the home's going to sit, and then the civil plan shows something else. And the civil plan is law. However, the foundations are laid is how they were laid. And so it's really important that the architectural and civil align, which seems like a very simple thing that just will happen. But because they're from different companies, and sometimes the architect takes the lead on coordination, and that's pretty helpful when they do that because they're able to make sure that their plans are up to date with everybody. But whenever they put that responsibility onto the developer, you have to be the one to make sure, okay, everyone's plans align. And that is almost impossible because there's no perfect set of plans. I think that's like something that should be that should be said. There is never going to be a 100% perfect set of plans. There's always something tiny that misses everyone's eye somehow.
Interesting. Okay, so the footprint is actually okay. Where's the foundation? So I'm going to use very simple terminology. Maybe you agree that, hey, the home will be built 10 feet from the curb, right? That's your setbacks or whatever.
Mhm.
And that's where the quote unquote footprint or the foundation will be laid. And that's where the house will be built on top of, like just using easy numbers, 10 feet from the curb.
Yeah.
But for some reason, the civil engineer plan might be 9 feet from the curb, while the architect's plan is 11 feet from the curb. And that's where you mean that they weren't up to date because they didn't line up together. Did
Yeah.
I understand that problem correctly?
Yeah, and that would be a huge problem. That one's like uncommon, honestly, like to have a mess up that big, but there would be that would be a huge mistake. But I think something that happens more often that is would be harder to notice is the pad it's or the basically where the home is going to go itself. The elevations are off, and the architectural plans aren't updated based on the civil plans. And so they lay the foundation and they have different elevations on it, but the actual home doesn't
Oh,
sit on it perfectly because it has to fit perfectly in order to work.
which makes perfect sense when you're building a home that needs to have a solid foundation.
Yeah.
All right, I love that. So now that we've gone through some of these issues, so that was one big problem, right? And then you mentioned like there's never a perfect set of plans. But tell us another problem that might come up during the entitlement phase.
Yeah, I think the biggest problem I think I've been able to put out and the most value I bring to the entitlement space is the fact that I have that project matrix because I keep track of everything that's happening in the project. And in entitlements, things get forgotten all the time, and things get lost,
Oh,
and things get basically pushed off until the very, very last moment. And then once they like rear their face, it's always bad. So I try, and that's why I love doing my project matrix because I bring every item up to the city initially. I ask them exactly what we're going to need, why we're going to need it, when we're going to need it. And from there, we can make a more accurate performa because without knowing what's going to happen, there's so many hidden fees in the development process that either get tacked on in the front, get tacked on in the very back. And by having it all mapped out from the get-go, so there's no gray area, no confusion, it changes the way it's done.
I love that. And you make everybody feel so much less stressed, man, when they know you're on top of every single little item in the entire phase. And Jared just giving you guys that are listening right now like hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars of value just from saving on the delays, not missing out on any items that need to get done. I mean, this stuff is so important. People underestimate how detailed you need to be in development. Sometimes people are like, oh, I got a piece of land, I'm just gonna go build it. And they're like, that's it, I can set it and forget it, which is so far from the truth.
Yeah.
And then they think, oh, if I hire an architect, the architect will handle this. But then they're like, the architect doesn't handle utility coordination. The architect is just there for X, X, and X. Like that is
Mm,
the engineer's responsibility.
mm.
Like just clarifying the roles is so important up front with your entire team. And that's why you have your racing matrix. You have your entire set of X item has to be handled by this person, has to be informed by this person.
Yeah.
So now we have learned about entitlements. We have learned about the different responsibilities of everybody in the entitlement phase. Do you ever get involved with like additional, like requesting for additional density, requesting, because like in the whole gay guise of like affordable housing, right?
Mm.
One of the big problems that we have is a undersupply of housing. So right now in California, there's a bunch of laws like SB 9 where you do lot splits, where you build ADUs, but the whole premise of all these initiatives is to build more housing. So I know you in the beginning you talked about like, hey, this is the existing zoning. But have you ever come across any situation where you're looking to, hey, how do I get more density? How do I get more units into this area? Whether it's at market rate or not, who cares? Because we just need more supply in general. So tell us a little bit about how you specifically approach getting more density if it's beyond what the current zoning allows.
Yeah. I think what we would do is show the city the feasibility of it. We would show them why this project would work in this area. We would show them again a site plan. And I think showing pretty pictures helps a lot. Like, and if you could go as far as to show them renders, that would be awesome.
Oh, wow.
We don't go that far, but that is something I've seen a couple series I was watching on land development, like where they were making virtual reality places of the build that they're going to do. That would be pretty cool to show the city, and I think that would honestly really change their heart a lot. But for now, what most people do is we just show them a site plan that has colors. We show them where the green area is going to be, the parks. We show them if there's going to be a pool. We show them the streets, the homes. And we basically show them that in this specific site, it would make more sense to have higher density and more units. And we show them that we could do it without compromising on quality. I mean, the first foundation is they have to be open to it. If the city doesn't want development, then they're not going to be open to higher density. But if they're wanting to grow their development scene and they're wanting to have more homes, and we show them, hey, this is how we would do it, it fits. It has an affordable section. It has a section with larger units. It has everything mixed around. This is why we think we should do this. They probably would consider a variance at that point, but you would then have to convince the city council. And that is something I've only touched on a little bit and seen how obviously the neighborhoods react and the people involved around the area react. And so I don't have much experience with that yet, but I would probably just take the same approach of just showing them why we believe this is a good project and why it would benefit their community.
Okay, that's a great approach. And I love the theme of preparation has stuck with you throughout the entire, it's a through line for everything that you've talked about today. It's always being prepared,
Yeah.
whether that is you looking at the municipal code before the meeting, whether that is bringing a preliminary site plan to that meeting to show people. And I love that you brought up like, hey, if you can show a picture or renderings, like a picture speaks 1,000 words, right?
Yeah.
This is exactly that same concept. So now you've gotten these conversations and you spoke a little bit about variance. I don't want to jump over this because not a lot of people even understand what a variance is. Can you explain to people what does a variance mean and how do you actually get a variance from your city?
Yeah. So a variance is basically the city giving you a legal authority to deviate from their blueprint, or from what they want in that area. So say if the setback in that area is 10 feet and you need a 9-foot setback in order to fit all the units that you have, a variance would be getting the legal authority to do that. And I think getting a variance is complicated, and most of the time you won't need one. As we're getting to higher and higher density, it does present itself sometimes. And there's other scenarios where you need a variance. 'Cause there's so many municipal codes, and sometimes the city is willing to compromise on one because it was maybe written with old infrastructure in mind or it no longer applies. But I think the process changes from city to city because it's a legal process and it is very specific and it's a very intentional process because the city put the code in for a reason. And so to deviate from it it has to be for a good reason. And so I haven't done it too many times that I know the ins and outs of it, but I would again, it's the same thing as before. You would come prepared. With this one, especially come legally prepared and
Oh, so
coordinate
good.
with the city and see what they're interested in.
Yeah, because you might need to get like a land use attorney involved. I mean, usually a variance, how I understand it, is usually a variance might be like one or two or three deviations from like the zoning item.
Yeah.
Like you have to get it granted by the zoning board. But some cities, they say, hey, if you were trying to get something rezoned for higher density or change it from industrial to residential, you might need like city council votes
Yeah, you get
to
the
make
city
that
council
happen.
approval. Yeah.
Yeah, so now all of a sudden you're dealing with a different sort of agency or authority in
Mm,
order to get your project approved, and that brings about different levels of complexity. As a developer, you have to understand what does that do to your timeline? What does
mm,
that do to your resources? Because if you have to say, hey, this X team cannot get start working on this thing until we get approval from this agency or this city council or this zoning board,
mm,
like that's all the sequencing that you have to think about. And to your point, you got to be agile because every single city might have different stance
mm.
on a variance or a zoning exemption,
Yeah.
etc. Like those are the different items that you have to consider as a developer. Okay. All right. So, Jared, it sounds like what kind of projects have you typically worked on? Have you typically worked on like single family builds, multifamily apartment ground up deals? Like, tell us a little bit more about the spectrum of the different types of deals that you have done.
Yeah. So when I first worked with a civil engineer, I was processing the entitlements for a really wide range of projects. There's some industrial, some commercial, some residential. And as I developed into a land developer, we currently do infill single family homes. And so what infill means is it's basically if you see a blank piece of land in a highly developed area, we're interested in building that one. Because it's just something we squeeze in. There's usually some problem with it. That's why it's been open and raw this whole time. And we're willing to coordinate and figure out what that problem is. And we'll do anywhere from 5 to 80 homes on those lots.
Got it. And usually these are 580 homes, like single family homes,
Yeah.
essentially? Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Interesting. And what kind of problems do you typically run into on those info laws? Because to your point, right? Some people have stayed away from it. You say, ha, I'm super organized. I know what I'm doing. I know how to have the conversations. Let's go tackle this problem.
I think something that is constantly a problem on a lot of projects is water.
Mm,
And whether it's maybe in a floodway or how to actually get the utilities to the project. Because getting utilities to a project is something you just don't think about. You just, I mean, when you're young, I guess, like when I was young, I just like imagine, like, I'm thinking, like, oh, like they just come, like they're just there. The city just has it mapped out. It's gonna work out. But most of the time, the utility connections are really far, or they're if they're downhill, the project is mostly not going to happen. But sometimes you can figure it out and get a pump station in there and get the utilities up. But yeah, I think the biggest problem that would come up is getting utility connections and seeing if there's a floodway in your project, which would just kill it immediately.
got it. All right. So it's in a floodway. That's a no go. But if there is, you said downhill, right? Like, what does that mean? Explain that for the audience.
Yeah,
If it's
so
downhill, it doesn't work.
Yeah, so if say the utility lines that go to your project are below the actual level that your project's on, so say it's like maybe a couple streets down and there's a slope. In order to get the utility lines up there, you have to either generate the pressure to get it up or you have to have a pump station to renew the pressure to get it up to your site.
Exactly.
And so
Because
that
if the
can be
water is down the
complicated.
hill, you have to pump the water up because that's how gravity works, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's just such a simple thing, but it presents itself as such a huge problem because it's really expensive to get the utility lines up because then you have to trench. Sometimes you have to trench really far if there isn't a utility line actually connected to that area. And then you have to do street improvements and all sorts of things that just you wouldn't expect.
And that costs so much money. I mean,
Yeah.
give people a sense of how much it will cost, like to put in or some. I'm assuming you've gotten quotes for some of these things, where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, you gotta build a pump station to generate the pressure to go upwards, and then you got to do all the trenching. You got to coordinate. I'm sure there's a bunch of fees. Give us a little bit of sense of like what it costs to get utilities into the
Yeah.
site.
I'm not too good on coordinating that one because we have a specific team member who does that, and he's really incredible with the numbers. He knows how much people typically quote, and he's able to coordinate in that way. So I typically don't stay too much in that one because he's very good at what he does in that regard. It's pretty cool. But
Interesting.
I guess another example that I did catch wind of is for undergrounding the power lines. There's been
Oh yeah.
quotes from SCE that were like a $500,000. And it was an incredible amount of it was basically just a gray area where they're like, hey, we don't know if we're going to use all this money, but you're going to have to give us all this money and we may give it back. And so working with
Wow.
Edison in that way can be a little daunting.
Yeah, because I mean, I've seen neighborhoods where they do work on putting the power lines into the ground,
Yeah.
and it costs a lot of money. There's a lot of neighborhood disruption, if you will.
Yeah.
But sometimes that, because you don't have the appearance of utility lines above ground, sometimes it makes the neighborhood more valuable because people don't like seeing power lines outside their houses,
Oh yeah,
which
and it's
is,
it's a legal requirement now. You have
oh
to,
yeah.
anytime you build, you have to underground all the power lines.
Oh, all of them, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Even if existing power lines are
Yeah.
there, you can't just tap into it. You have to underground it now.
Yeah, if it's on your property, you have to underground it.
I did not know that for California. So
Yeah.
I don't develop personally in California. So that makes a lot of sense. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
it's an expensive. That's probably one of the biggest expenses in the project is undergrounding those lines.
Man, you have dropped so many nuggets. You have taught people so much today. Jared, I gotta ask you. So, when I started this podcast, Jared, people have always said, "Kent, you're never gonna be able to solve affordable housing. If you could have done it, like why couldn't somebody else do it?"
Hmm.
And part of the reason is I don't think a lot of people surface information about development, how to build more housing, and honestly, just pull back the curtain on all the problems that you have talked about today. And I view you as such a key piece of that puzzle, Jared. So, like, I want to hear from you. Like, why do you think affordable housing, particularly the lack of supply of affordable housing, has just been so hard to solve for? What's your perspective?
Honestly, there's a couple things that come to my mind. The first one would be there's a lot of municipal fees that go into building a home. There's development impact fees. There's fees that have like just it's called a building permit fee, but it's not the review fee. It's just a fee that basically is an umbrella for a ton of different municipal fees. There is a new fee coming in, supposedly, that's for a vehicles miles travel study, which basically just studies how your project will affect traffic in the area. And there's solar requirements. And so I guess like to summarize, it's the fees and requirements that California specifically implements that are extremely expensive and their long-term sustainability, I don't know if it's established enough to justify how expensive they are.
Man, so it's just everything is kind of just stacked against more housing supply being created with this caveat at an affordable rate. Because you
Yeah.
can't say, hey, go build, but you have to do X, 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 underground your utilities, X, 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 put in solar, X, X, X. And now all of a sudden, how do you make something that's affordable? Because look, at some point, a developer has to make a little bit of profit, right? There just needs to be financial incentives.
Yeah.
And to build a home for someone, like some people will always just say, like, oh, these hungry developers, these greedy developers. But I would argue, hey, if it's reasonably priced, at the same time, like we use our iPhones every single day, we use our cell phones every single day. Do we not think that Apple profits off of that? Like, come on. Like, for something that you use for 10, 12 hours a day, like your home that you live in, why can't the person that built that thing for you make a little bit of money? For some reason, it just escaped people's purview of
Yeah.
what's allowed and what's not allowed.
Yeah, yeah, developers definitely get a pretty bad reputation in that way with the general public. But I would say it's really not justified, especially here in California, because I think developers here deal with so many requirements, and the profit margin is just smaller and smaller and smaller, that it's almost more of a service. But in terms of getting the affordable housing, like what I would change is maybe just it's such a big overhaul that it's almost infeasible. But if there was a way to coordinate with just I don't, it's really tough because each municipality has their own fees. So if you were to work with California and work on a more sustainable way of divvying fees and why we have these fees or how we can help in other ways, I think that would be probably the best way. And that is what the BIA is currently doing. They coordinate with the local municipalities to make building more sustainable. But I think that's what I would do. And then there's another aspect to that, which is known as like not in my backyard. And it's like people don't want affordable housing near them, which is really unfortunate. And I think maybe educating people on why affordable housing in particular can benefit a community would kind of change that stigma.
Thank you so much, Jared. What a great answer. And it kind of shines a light on all the items that are stacked against the developer, but also sometimes the misinformation that might be out there about what affordable housing is. Sometimes it's just housing for working class families
Yeah,
that just like my mom who was just trying to put food on the table that just needed some help to get by at a reasonable rate because homes are just way too expensive.
yeah, there
And
are a
if
lot.
we don't work together to solve this problem, then the hopes of owning a home for almost the next generation might be completely off the tables. So, Jared, I'm so glad you came onto the podcast today. I'm so glad you shared so much valuable information about what it means to be in the development process. Dude, it was such a good masterclass on just learning everything and how to conduct yourself in meetings and how to prepare yourself for the world of development. This was so good, man. I had so much fun in this conversation. Jared, for people that want to reach out to you or learn more from you, like how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I think the best way to get in touch with me is probably through my LinkedIn. I'm really active on my LinkedIn. So if you just look up my first and last name and shoot me a connection request, I'd love to shoot you my email or my phone number and we could chat.
Sounds good. And Jared, what kind of opportunities are you looking for, like on behalf of your company? Like what I know you mentioned info lots earlier. Is that what you're looking to acquire more of? Like what can people do to bring you opportunities?
Yeah, yeah. I think if people have raw land that they know of and that they'd be interested in selling, we would love to take a look at it. And that would probably be the main thing that would we'd be looking for.
And what market are you specifically looking in, like city or counties?
Specifically somewhere within the Inland Empire or the low desert, like in terms of Palm Desert, Palm Springs, La Quinta. So anywhere in that area, if they have any raw land and they would like to sell it, we would love to take a look at it.
And is it has to be a certain size for that to qualify for your criteria?
Yeah, I think it would probably we'd want something at least 2 to 3 acres and larger. The upper
Got it.
bound of that limit is kind of to be determined. So if they were to bring it to us, we could coordinate and we could always cut a piece off if it's too big for us.
Got it. All right. Jared, this has been fun, man. I'm so glad you came onto this podcast. I had so much fun with you, dude. I cannot wait to bring you back on a podcast, maybe like a year, dude, just to hear more about the projects that you're working on. This is going to be so dope.
Yeah, no, I totally appreciate you bringing me on. I'm obviously a youngin in the industry, and so I appreciate that you gave me this opportunity to chat.
All right. Sounds good, man. And we are out.